The final video is showing you how to do a CSV export. So there are several options for the CSV export. You can export the overall carbon footprint within a specified period, or you can export emissions for a project, or emissions for all projects undertaken by a client, and similarly for all projects undertaken within a specific location. So to do the CSV export, you just need to click on the Export CSV File button below the table, the relevant table on the dashboard. So I'll just demonstrate how to export an overall carbon footprint for the 2024 calendar year. So if you click on Export, it will then prompt you to select a folder in which to save the CSV file. So I've made a folder called Fame CSV Exports. So I will just save it in here. If you click OK, and then you may encounter an error message. So this error message is simply saying that not all the data has been input for the period that's being exported. So this will mean that the footprint may be incomplete, and so you have the options to cancel the export and check what data is missing by going to the data input check, or if you have already checked within the data input check and you're sure that all the data has been input correctly and completely, then you can click OK and the tool will go ahead with the export. So all this does is before exporting it will run the data input check, and if there are any red cells then it will throw up this error message here. So if I just click OK, it will go ahead with the export. And then it will come up with a message telling you that the CSV file has been saved, and then it will give the file path. So whilst this is up, I'll just explain the naming conventions. So obviously Fame CSV Exports was my folder, and then it will save it with a timestamp. So we've got the date and the time here. It's the 8th of January and it's 20 to 2. And then you have here the period that's being exported. So we have the 2024 calendar year, and then it just says emissions. For ones where you're exporting for a project or a client or a location, you'll also see the project name, client name or location within the name of the file as well. So we just click OK. And so now if I just open that folder, we can see that it's here. We just open the file and I'll just show you how to navigate around the CSV. So on the CSV there are 4 tabs. So we have a front sheet, a summary, simple emissions data, and then a detailed emissions data. So if I start with the front sheet, it basically gives an overview to whoever you're sending the CSV to, what data is included. So we can see here that there's a client, location and project boxes which are empty because we did an overall carbon footprint rather than one of those 3. And then it shows you the data period. So we chose the 2024 calendar year, so it's 1st of Jan to the 31st of December. And then if we scroll down, within the detailed emissions data, there are some column names which are just explained what they include. So they are basically, these columns are sums, are a sum of the emission data that has been input, and the front sheet just tells you which categories are allocated to which column, and then the reporting scope just tells you which type of report. So for the overall emissions you'll have these 2 columns because it's non-project based reporting and also the all reporting, but if you're exporting a client or location then you will have these 5 extra columns here. And then if you go below, there's just a simple explanation of the overhead allocation, what biogenic emissions are, and then development emissions below. So the main sort of tab will be probably the summary tab, this is essentially just an export of what was seen on the dashboard. So if I flick back to the dashboard, we'll see that it's just a copy and paste of this table, which sums up the emissions into the greenhouse gas protocol categories, which should hopefully be recognisable to whoever is using the CSV file. And then we have a simple emissions data. So this takes every individual entry, tells you the sum of the emission, the in-scope emissions, so the market-based emissions. This says market-based because we selected on the dashboard that we wanted a market-based export. If you change this to locational-based, then it would give you here, it would be a locational-based emissions, and similarly, this would say total locational-based footprint. And then it also gives the biogenic emissions and the development emissions and the category it's allocated to. If you then want to investigate further into how the allocations was done, so for that's probably more relevant in the project export, which I'll do one in a second to sort of demonstrate. Then you can go into the emissions database, and obviously you can see the record number. So if you want to investigate number 3, you can find it number 3 here. And then it just tells you the sum and then the percentage of the record within the chosen period. So for this one, for example, you've got the sum is 62. We want 70% of this, and so that's why we've got 44 there. So now I'll briefly demonstrate a project 1 so that we can see the differences. So if you hit export, then so we've got not all person days are input, same as what we had before. So the file has been saved. Again, you can see here that the naming convention, you've got the name of the project in there now. And then if I just navigate to it, so we want this motorway one. Exactly the same layout, so you've got your front sheet. Now it says motorway, your summary as on the dashboard, and then your simple emissions data and the emissions data. Again, so on the detailed emissions data, you will also have person days and project person days included here, and then the percentage of overhead allocation methodology. So here we had 50 person days spent on the motorway project out of 100 project person days done within that month. So 50% of the emissions will be allocated. And so in the simple emissions data, this column is simply the project emissions plus the overhead emissions. And I'm just going to show you finally what it will look like if you do a client or a location. Again, they're quite similar, so I'll just do the client one. So if we export this CSV into the file. So instead of ignoring those errors as I'm doing, you should really be checking what data is missing by going to the data input check tab, seeing what's highlighted red and ensuring that there's a reason why no data has been input, i.e. that activity hasn't happened in that month, or you should be inputting more data. So now we can click, again we can see Environment Agency is there, so we can click on the Environment Agency, oops, sorry. So we can see that the file has been saved and it's been named by Environment Agency. And then if we open it, we can see on the front sheet. So on the front sheet, we can see now that it says Client Environment Agency. It lists the projects that are undertaken by the Environment Agency with the project code. This is so you can see on the emissions data which emissions are occurring for each project. Then the summary will be what's on the dashboard, so it will be a sum of both projects. If you need a breakdown of a summary for each project, then you will need to just export each project individually using the project CSV export function. And then if we go to simple emissions data, we can see if we scroll across that it includes the project code. So for these first ones, we've got CH001, which we know is the motorway project. And then if we scroll down, we'll have CH002, which we now know from looking at the front sheet is the green belt. So you can sort of look at them like that. So it's essentially two project CSV exports put on top of each other. That is essentially all you need to know about the CSV exports. All the information is in the CSV exports. We've sort of tried to create it as accessible as possible for people who maybe do not want to know all bits of information, whilst also including a tab which does have all the information on there in case it needs to be audited or something along those lines. So this is the final video, so I hope they were helpful. If anything else, if something's not clear or you have any questions, then please do get in touch and or look at the transcripts and the methodology document for more information. Thank you.